Okay.
Good morning, friends. Just a few introductory comments before we start with our ULT DC prepared remarks for this day. Yesterday, there was an International ULT Day at 1 p.m. with over 60 attendees from all over the world, which was very good. We also got a few hours ago greetings from Bangalore ULT, which is probably going on right now there, the ULT celebration. Ours, anyhow, they sent us some readings, which I'll read them, and then we'll turn it over to Carolina for the ULT DC presentation. They sent us, this is from HPB, the recognition of pure Theosophy, the philosophy of the rational explanation of things, and not the tenets, is of the most valuable importance in the society, inasmuch as it alone can furnish the beacon light needed to guide humanity on its true path. This should never be forgotten, nor should the following fact be overlooked. On the day when Theosophy will have accomplished its most holy and most important mission, namely to unite firmly a body of men of all nations in brotherly love and bent on a pure altruistic work, not on a labor with selfish motives. On the day only will Theosophy will be higher than any nominal brotherhood of men. This will be a wonder and a miracle truly, for the realization of which humanity is vainly waiting for the last 18 centuries, since the 18th century, for the last 18 centuries, and which every association has hitherto failed to accomplish. According as people are prepared to receive it, so new theosophical teachings will be given, but no more will be given than the world on its present level of spirituality, which is too much, which isn't much. I just threw that in there. Can profit by. It depends on the spread of Theosophy, the assimilation of what has already been given, how much more will be received, and how soon from foul messages. The function of Theosophists is to open men's hearts and understanding to charity, justice, and generosity, attributes which belong specifically to human kingdom and are naturally to man when he has developed the qualities of a human being. Teaching Theosophy teaches the animal man to be a human man, and when people have learned to think and feel as truly human beings should feel and think, they will act humanely, and works of charity, justice, and generosity will be done spontaneously by all. That's by Mr. Judge. This is by Mr. Judge, and that was by HPB. The Theosophical movement is moral, ethical, spiritual, universal, invisible, safe in effect, and continuous. A society formed for theosophical work is a visible organization, an effective machine for conserving energy and putting it to use. It is not, nor can it be, universal, nor is a continuous. One can therefore seem that to worship an organization, even though it may be the beloved theosophical one, is to fall down before form and to become the slave once more to that dogmatism which our portion of the theosophical movement, the TS, was meant to overthrow. This devotion to mere form will lead to a nullification of brotherhood at this first train. H.P. Blavatsky herself declared that it will be better to do away with the society rather than destroy brotherhood. And that she herself declared the European part of it free and independent. But the real unity and prevalence and the real internationalism do not consist of in having a single organization. They are found in the similarity of aim, of aspiration, of purpose, of teachings, of ethics. Let us then press forward together in the great work of the real theosophical movement, which is aided by working organizations, but is about them all. Together, we can devise more and better ways for spreading the light of truth through all the earth, mutually assisting and encouraging one another. We may learn how to put Theosophy into practice so as to be better able to teach and enforce it by example before others. We will then, each and all, be members of that universal lodge, free and independent Theosophists, which embraces every friend of the human race. Mr. Crosby, the object of the theosophical study and work is not individual development, but that each and all should become true helpers of humanity. Some will catch the feeling. Our effort is to disseminate among Theosophists the idea of unity, regardless of union. Many old-timers will not see the need, but those disgusted with the claims and squabbles of organizations will fall into line on the true basis of union, similarity of main purpose and teaching, or they will see that the failure of the various societies is in that basic lack. HPV wrote, "Don't follow me or my path. Follow the path I show. The masters who are behind. We point always that the most and the best that anyone can do is to do as Judge did. Follow the lines laid down by HPV, regardless of any others. All follow the lines laid down by HPV, regardless of any others. All that we are doing to help others to find their lines. We do not want attention paid to us, so we point to those lines of direction as things to be seen and known. For ourselves, we are merely some who are able to grasp and apply, as well as aid in direction. This will prevent the ULT from degenerating into some such condition and as now exists throughout the world, theosophical world. For it, for if attention is attracted to the living workers, it is therefore detracted from the real issue. The strength shown by any worker is not that of the personality, which has none, of itself. It lies in the words, the ideas, the conviction of truth held by the inner man. The authority which we recognize is not what men term authority, which comes from outside and which demands obedience, but an internal recognition of the value of that which flows through any given point, both focus or individual. This is the authority of one's self-discrimination, independent, INTUITION, and the highest intellectual. Good words for today. And now we're going to have our celebration in commemoration of RC by ULT DC.
Good morning, friends. We are coming to you on Google Meet from the Washington, D.C. United Lodge of Theosophists. ULT Day is a special day set aside for honoring Robert Crosby, affectionately known as RC, founder of ULT. All ULTs in the world follow the declaration that he presented in establishing the first ULT in Los Angeles, California, on February 18, 1909. The declaration is the same now as it was then, and it says, "The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of theosophy, without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of theosophy, and the exemplification in practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization. And it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The true theosophists belong to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. The form signed by associates of the United Lodge of Theosophists reads, "Being in sympathy with the purposes of this lodge, as set forth in its declaration, I hereby record my desire to be enrolled as an associate, it being understood that such association calls for no obligation on my part other than that which I myself determine." Robert Crosby molded this declaration from the writings of Blavatsky and Judge. He rescued more theosophy by establishing ULT along the lines laid down by Blavatsky, the creator of pure theosophy, and Judge, preserver of pure theosophy. Robert Crosby was born on January 10, 1849, in Montreal, Canada. He was raised a Presbyterian and was invited to join the communion at 16 years old. But he considered himself still unfit. He determined to find the truth which must be knowledge. and which was to be found in due course by seeking it. He adopted an attitude of constant questioning as to life's object, pain, sickness, death, mercy, justice, fate. He was deeply interested in religious and philosophical subjects and found that the religions around him offered no satisfactory answers when he questioned them deeply. He moved to Boston in 1886, and one day Crosby's business partner brought him news of the proposed establishment of a branch of the Theosophical Society in Boston. As the word Theosophia suggested much to him, Crosby went to the first meeting. He recognized at once that this was what he was searching for, and he joined the Theosophical Society immediately. When Judge came from New York to speak, he was introduced to Crosby, and they immediately forged a bond of friendship and trust. Of this first meeting with Mr. Judge, Crosby wrote, quote, a friend, quote unquote, a friend of all time and of the future. Crosby was for many years the devoted and close companion of Judge and an occult pupil of Blavatsky. Mr. Judge in his lifetime used to refer students in the New England states to Mr. Crosby, saying, ask Crosby, he thinks and acts as I do. Crosby supported Mr. Judge's principles fully. He acted as one of the witnesses on the scene. He kept the link of pure theosophy unbroken. After Mr. Judge's death, the hints given by Judge during his life in regard to Crosby were not grasped by those around him, who had what they fancied to be their own positions. After the death of Judge, Catherine Tingley became prominent. She established an institution at Point Loma, California. At her request, Crosby joined the Point Loma group. And Crosby left Point Loma after several years of trying to bring focus to the original teachings as left by Blavatsky and Judge. He moved to South Pasadena and started a study class using Judge's The Ocean of Theosophy and Blavatsky's The Key to Theosophy as the first texts to be studied, and also the Bhagavad Gita, the Theosophy of 5,000 years ago. We're going to have three readings today, one from the writings of Blavatsky, another from Crosby, and a third from William Judge, followed by a talk on Robert Crosby's establishment of ULT along the lines laid down by Blavatsky and Judge, and then a fourth reading from the writings of Robert Crosby.
The first reading is from the writings of H.P. Blavatsky. Theosophy is as old as the world in its teachings and ethics, if not in name. Underlying every ancient popular religion was the same ancient wisdom doctrine, one and identical, professed and practiced by the initiates of every country, who alone were aware of its existence and importance. To ascertain its origin and the precise age in which it was matured is now beyond human possibility. A philosophy so profound, a moral code so ennobling, and practical results so conclusive and so uniformly demonstrable is not the growth of a generation or even of a single epoch. Fact must have been piled upon fact, deduction upon deduction, science having begotten science, and myriads of brightest human intellects have reflected upon the laws of nature before this ancient doctrine had taken concrete shape. The wisdom religion is the inheritance of all nations the world over. The aims of theosophy are several, but the most important of all are those which are likely to lead to the relief of human suffering under any or every form, moral as well as physical. And we believe the former to be far more important than the latter. Theosophy has to inculcate ethics. It has to purify the soul if it would relieve the physical body, whose ailments, save cases of accidents, are all hereditary. It is not by studying occultism or selfish ends that one can ever reach the true goal, that of helping suffering mankind. As mankind is essentially of one and the same essence, and this essence is one, infinite, uncreate, and eternal, whether we call it God or nature, nothing, therefore, can affect one nation or one man without affecting all other nations and all other men. This is as certain and as obvious as a stone thrown into a pond will, sooner or later, set in motion every single drop of water therein. It is an occult law that no man can rise superior to his individual failings without lifting, be it ever so little, the whole body of which he is an integral part. In the same way, no one can sin or suffer the effects of sin alone. All pain and suffering are results of want of harmony, and the one terrible and only cause of the disturbance of harmony is selfishness in some form or other. Hence, karma gives back to every man the actual consequences of his own actions without any regard to the moral character. But since he receives his due for all, it is obvious that he will be made to atone for all sufferings which he has caused, just as he will reap in joy and gladness the fruits of all the happiness and harmony he can help produce. Make men feel and recognize in their innermost hearts what is their real, true duty to all men, and every old abuse of power, every iniquitous law in the national policy based on human, social, or political selfishness will disappear of itself.
The second reading comes from the writings of Robert Crosby. There are beings who come into the world from time to time with no marks of distinction that we as human beings can recognize, yet the possessors of a knowledge which we ardently desire to possess. They are never recognized, save by the very few while they are among us. But when they go, that which they have been given tell us what they were. By the very character of the teachings of Jesus, we recognize the nature of the being who brought them. So the teachings of Theosophy, a knowledge which is absolutely scientific, covering every department of nature, explaining all that now are mysteries, declare the nature of those beings who brought Theosophy, our elder brothers. And they who have raised themselves out of our ranks do not leave us in trouble, in darkness, or in ignorance. Their desire is that we shall see, understand, know ourselves, that quickly setting right the ideas which we hold of life, and letting right actions flow from right ideas, we may act as divine beings. The great message of Theosophy is for the hungry, for the weary, for those who are desirous of knowledge, for those who see the absolute paucity of what has been put before us as knowledge by those who style themselves our teachers, for those who find no explanation anywhere of the mysteries that surround us, who do not know themselves, who do not understand themselves. For them, there is a way. For them, there is food in abundance. For them, this whole movement is kept in being by one single will, the will of the elder brothers who have carried these great eternal truths through good and evil in order that mankind may be benefited, not desiring any reward, not desiring any recognition, desiring only that their fellow men, their younger brothers, may know, may realize that they know. The way to know the truth is to get right back to what the teachers themselves gave, both in philosophy and in right work. If that is done, it will be found that there is neither variableness nor shadow of turning in the ULT from the lines laid down. Either Theosophy pure and undefiled is the most real thing in the world, or we are all wasting our time and effort. If we are able to conceive its reality in all seriousness, we should then never cease trying to understand and apply what has been recorded by Master's messenger for guidance and instruction. What is the distinction between Theosophy and anything else? In fundamental principles, I should say. Nothing else affords an all-inclusive view of existence. All kinds of sincere efforts help all kinds of systems contain some truth, but they all fall short because they all exclude or ignore some part of nature. The students have missed much by careless reading. If this is a movement inspired by masters, and if H.P.B. Blavatsky and Judge were their mouthpieces, there is the necessity for looking into the meaning behind the words they used. I do not think that they use words purposelessly. It is for us and for all others who would serve them to apply, and apply their teachings. There is no time limit to effort.
Should we
Thank you.
move to the talk? Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we do that, and we'll
Yeah.
go back and get this on the reading if we have time.
Sure.
Okay. ULT, the Robert Crosby and Theosophy. Slide 2. The impulse, the motivation, and the tireless activity which led Robert Crosby to eventually form the United Lodge of Theosophists saved the original and genuine teachings of Theosophy from oblivion. Teachings, as originally left by HPB, might still be out of print and largely unavailable today, were it not for RC and a few others who took it upon themselves at great personal expense to revive the exact, unaltered, unabridged writings of H.P. Blavatsky and William Q. Judge. HPB was the mother and creator of Theosophy, the teacher, the message, and the messenger in one. Number one, HPB was the mother and creator of Theosophy. The message and the messenger in one. The nature of her work exposed her to selfish interest of those in religion, science, and the Theosophical Society, which were imperiled by her mission or overshadowed by her greatness. HPB referred to William Q. Judge as being the preserver of Theosophy and the heart and soul of the esoteric section. Upon her death, Mr. Judge became the target for attacks upon her, only at last to become victim, as she had been, to treachery from within the society. The enemies of the faithful are always from within the household. There's always one witness on the scene. After the death of Mr. Judge, R.C. rose up to keep the bank unbroken. Few realized that this earnest man, whose heart and soul were assimilated to the nature of HPB and WQJ, was the agent for the regeneration of the Theosophical movement on the lines laid down by the masters. So HPB was the creator, WQJ was the preserver, and RC was the regenerator of pure Theosophy. RC always pointed to the teachers, never to himself. He claimed no credit for authoring the talks and articles he left behind, as they were all based on the work passed on through our teachers. RC showed the way to any students who might in truth be seeking the path. One of the few articles for which RC claimed authorship was on his deceased friend. The article was titled, number 2, A Friend of Old Time and of the Future. As such does William Q. Judge appear to me, as doubtless he does to many others, R.C. said. The first theosophical treatise that I read was the epitome of Theosophy. Of his extraordinary ability of turning seeming evils into powers for good, I have had many proofs. That he was a great occultist, many knew by individual experience, but none have fathomed the depth of his power and knowledge. The lands have been laid down for us by HPV, WQ, J, and the Masters. R.C. steadfastly held high the unadulterated message of the masses as transmitted by HPV and WQJ. Amongst usurpers, traitors, and their unsuspected followers. Stick to the messenger, he would say. In quoting from a master's letter, he noted that ingratitude is not one of their vices. Go on with the work, R.C. said. We are working in the present for the future. Unless the nature of HPV and WQJ is grasped, Theosophy is not understood and cannot be understood. Number three, R.C. was born on January 10, 1849 in Montreal, Canada. Both parents were Scottish. They met and married in Canada. R.C. had a strong regard for the rights of others and always exercised a strong moral control over himself. Number 14, he joined the TS in Boston on June 5th, 1889. 1888. Soon after Mr. Judge came to Boston, R.C. and other new members were introduced to him. Upon leaving, Mr. Judge called back to R.C. Good night, Crosby. I've got you on my list. Mr. Judge invited R.C. to communicate directly with HPV. R.C. recorded, quote, a veil was lifted, a tie was formed, which has never since been broken. Mr. Judge came frequently to Boston and stayed at the Crosby house, and R.C. would stay at his house in New York. It's Mr. Judge's house. When the esoteric section was formed, R.C. became one of its earliest members. He was secretary and president of the ES group in Boston. He identified himself with the Son section of the Theosophical movement and was for many years the devoted close companion of William Q. Judge and a cult pupil of H.P. Blavatsky. Mr. Judge would refer students in the New England states to R.C., saying, quote, ask Crosby, he thinks this and acts as I do. Close quote. Close quote. R.C. worked unceasingly for the movement in its exoteric and esoteric channels. Few ever suspected R.C.'s connection with HPV and Mr. Judge was more than casual and incidental. Number 5. From 1894 to 1896, R.C. was witness on the scene of Mr. Judge being attacked, exonerated, and later persecuted again by the chief officers of the TS outside of America. WQJ and R.C. maintained their position that Theosophy alone would help to be the sole reason for the TS. TS asked R.C. to take up residence in Point Loma outside of San Diego, California. Then a newly established headquarters for the TS in America. He was required to turn all of his personal assets over to the organization. After 4 years of trying to convince TS to stay along the original lines laid down, he saw that this would not happen. He and his wife left Point Loma penniless. R.C. got employment at the Los Angeles Times. He became acquainted with his neighbors with similar interests in theosophy, and he and a few others decided to organize on their own, adopting the original principles and the original program of the masters, which HPB and Mr. Judge has embodied practically during their lifetime. Number 6. On February 18, 1909, ULT was launched with the declaration that was previously read by the previous reader, introducing to this talk. That declaration still stands today. It is short but full of meaning. Horstein's letters to all open-minded theosophists invited them to become associates. His letter included comments like, "From the beginning, but a handful recognized the gravity of the issues involved, and that's still the case. Work, a will to study, apply, and so come understand the play of forces in the human nature, the practical application of the third object." R.C. would reinforce the semi-esoteric character of the ULT. He stressed the personality and anonymity in order to protect the work and to protect the workers from pride and ambition. He was no believer in diluted theosophy. His loyalty was wholehearted and single-minded. When one of his associates was warnings of failure, R.C. said, quote, "Do not grieve over failures and partial successes. It is the effort that counts. No, he who, with right motive and with sincere goodwill, does the best that he can, and all that he knows how to do, does enough." Show this different slide. Okay. Number 7. It's stuck on something on the side.
Yeah, it's fine now.
Is that okay now?
Yeah, I can see slide 3.
Okay. Theosophy magazine was founded on November 1912, with Mr. Crosby serving as chief editor until his death in 1990. Number 8. In 1915, Theosophy School was started. In 1916, the calls for children who ask why, which was edited by Mr. Crosby, was issued. Mr. Crosby also set most of the Theosophy School songs to music himself. Or he attended personally to an incessant stream of correspondence from inquirers who came in some unknown ways to learn about him, and to seek his kindly advice and suggestion. He never denied his help, but gave freely without stint or limit. In his last article, Mr. Crosby reiterated the position that theosophy is not a constantly changing set of ideas, but a consistent and complete body of knowledge to be studied, applied, and promulgated as originally presented. As regards to himself and his family, R.C. was always well dressed in public, at work, and in the lodge rooms, so that Theosophy might not be rated on a poor personal appearance. R.C. continued his work and communications with others up until when overtaken by illness and pain. He left his body on number 9, June 25th, 1996, which is 1992, a few days from now, without complaining. During the days of intense suffering that preceded his release, never did R.C. ever arrogate to himself authority of any kind, nor fail to discourage tendencies toward personal adulation on the part of fellow students. He made a living revival of the three objects of the Theosophical movement and delivered from neglect the three fundamental propositions of the secret doctrine. The honor given to R.C. is not a personal devotion. It is recognition of and gratitude for services which might have been the part of anyone who saw as he did, and in whom was born the same determination. To reverence the name and the character of Robert Crosby, therefore, is to pledge allegiance to practical work for humanity. He stands for that. That the Theosophy and HPB and WQJ in the world today, that is not attributed to the history of this, and the history of the Theosophical movement is of a record. Their opportunity to continue the movement itself as it was begun is not due to any of the Theosophical societies or successors of leaders, but to the loyalty of Robert Crosby, a humble pupil who chose with his eyes wide open to follow in the footsteps of his predecessors. Theosophy to him was a life to be lived. Where he had wisdom, he used it. Where he lacked wisdom, he had faith. Faith in the law, faith in the teaching, faith in the teacher. HPB said, be theosophists, work for theosophy, theosophy first and theosophy last. For its practical realization alone can save the Western world. Robert Crosby took these words to heart, made them his own, found others who imbibed his spirit, drank the same great source, and so can any theosophist, however humble or however situated. So alone will the great first object to form the nucleus of universal brotherhood be realized. A few months after the death of Mr. Crosby, Mr. B.P.R. Wadia, he's an industrialist and prominent member of the TS, visited Los Angeles, where he heard of Mr. Crosby for the first time. He became active in the work of ULT and was instrumental in spreading the movement with the establishment of ULTs in New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. in 1921, then in London, Paris, Amsterdam, The Hague, and finally in Bombay and Bangalore. Neither R.C. nor any of his students in ULT made any public claim to be successor, leader, or teacher. Each student and inquirer has been carefully put into direct touch with HPB, our teacher, through her writings, original and unchanged. It has been encouraged to study, work for Theosophy, and practice that universal brotherhood which forms the unifying basis of all nature. Mr. Judge's writings have been selected for study and reproduction because they most faithfully and carefully follow and supplement Madame Blavatsky's writings. Most students are encouraged to prove all this to themselves, this in the writings. The Theosophical Society was keeping a new revised edition of the Theistic Doctrine available with over 30,000 alterations in addition, and it issued a spurious third volume. Number 11, in 1925, 1926, ULT reprinted and issued the original edition of the Secret Doctrine, which has been reprinted several times since then and is still available. Number 12, Notes on the Bhagavad Gita was established in 1928. Mr. Judge had prepared the notes for the first 7 chapters before his death. Mr. Crosby prepared the last 11 chapters, 18, chapters 8 to 18, and 19. The students, there's no difference in the writing between the first 7 chapters and the last 11 that Mr. Crosby prepared. And slide 4. Okay. Number 13. A photographic reprint of the original edition of Isis Unveiled was issued by ULT in 1930, and Isis was completely out of print at that time. It is now currently available because of ULT. It was only after he had passed away that his written articles, talks, and transcriptions, and some of R.C.'s letters were published in book form and under R.C.'s name. 2 such books were titled The Friendly Philosopher and Universal Theosophy. He makes such statements as, quote, "It is to the teachings that the attention has to be called, not to ourselves, who are only handing down what they can, as best we can." Friendly Philosophy, page 365. What is at the root of the schisms that has corrupted the Theosophical Society that HPV left? Personalities, every time. What is the opposite to corrective personalities? Nothing more less than an impersonality, which seeks nothing for itself and everything for the cause of Theosophy, pure and simple. There is no worldly fame, glory, of profit in such a course, yet it and it alone removes every obstacle that might intervene between the message and the masters of the message of Theosophy and those who desire to study and apply it on its own merits. The mind of the race is still obsessed with the idea that it is important and essential to know who the active natures are, whereas the important thing is the merit of the thing done. Number 15, answers the questions on the ocean of Theosophy by Mr. Crosby was issued in 1937. And number 16, all of HPV's and WQJ's work books and their magazine articles have been represented several times and are also in electronic version online. The prime objective of ULT continues to be to remove all barriers between the student and the message of Theosophy as it was presented by HPB and WQJ. Therefore, the original texts are reprinted. The few fruits of nature of RC and ULT have kept the genuine Theosophy and the genuine Theosophical movement alive in the world at a period in this dark cycle when it would surely otherwise have perished. Those seeking to truly be on accord with nature's law of universal brotherhood are invited to help us in the work of keeping the link to the teachings unbroken. We have our lodges are one of many throughout the world. Contact your local lodge or contact us if you want to be part of this movement. And we would be happy to discuss with you what we have to do. And we all know that we only keep this work alive through our personal effort, through our time and contributions of money. Our next talk will be from the ULT podium just a few days from after July 4th, which is our Independence Day for the United States. Our presentation will be on the root of liberty, the influence of depths in formation of this country. Thank you for your attention. That ends our prepared comments. We're about out of time, but we do have 3 more minutes if we want to read have the ULT. Well, we have some more. We have a writing from the writings of Mr. Crosby. We'll see how much more time we have. But we have one more reading to read, but we may not have time. But I'll turn it over to the reader for number 4.
The reading number 4 is from the writings of Robert Crosby. It is to the teachings that attention has to be called, not to ourselves who are only handling them on best as we can. If one sees that in many ways he is not able to do all that needs to be done, or that he would like to accomplish, it is evidence that he is in the way of improving. Our ideals are never reached. They continually precede us. As a man thinks, so he becomes. Time is an element in this, and it is shortened by patient doing of what we can. To be in the least cast down by our apparent imperfections is a form of impatience, a disregard of the law. Whatever comes is right, until something better appears. Observed defects will fade out under observation, so we can cheerfully bear with our own defects as well as those of others, while we go right on working. Could right philosophy be implanted, even the single idea of the divine nature of man, a greater impetus would be given to right living. Then a philosophy in accord with this nature would be sought by those so quickened. Without the right philosophy, strength and special faculties are useless. If all study so as to be better able to help and teach others, there must result a general gain and help. Theosophists must point out error by comparison with Theosophy. Methods must vary with time, place, and conditions. Few minds, especially those attracted by the lure of occult, are able to make applications in any wide sense. Restrictions have to be pointed out to them. We have to learn that the way to present truth is by examining various beliefs in its light. The right to obtain consideration of the ideas we have to present implies a full sense of freedom on the part of the one who listens as well as on the part of the speaker. In these days of proselyting and propaganda for all sorts of isms, there is the more need of tolerance if we are able to find those chinks in the mind of others through which questions may be possibly aroused. We can set the example of examining anything on its merits and then presenting in contrast the theosophical view which accords with nature as a whole. I think that the word theosophy has power. If it had not, there would not be so many misusing the name. In spite of all these, theosophy itself is untouched. Our work is to keep it pure as it was delivered to us for the sake of those who can be helped. Theosophy, pure and simple, is the standard by which efforts may be applied and errors combated, so it must always be kept in evidence as a sort of all right effort.
Thank you. Well, time is up, but should we read and have the third reading read?
Do you want the third reading too?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Read it.
The last reading is from the writings of W.Q. Judge. Some years ago, one of those masters in whom some of our members believed directed HPB to write a letter for him to a certain body of theosophists. In this, he said that each member would become, in his own town or city, if earnest, sincere, and unselfish, an active center from which would radiate unseen, powerful forces able to influence men and women in the vicinity for good. And that soon inquirers would appear, a branch in time be organized, and thus the whole neighborhood would receive benefit. This seems just and reasonable, in addition to its being stated by such high authority. Members ought to consider and think over it so that the action may follow. Too many who think themselves theosophically alone in their own town have folded their hands and shut up their minds, saying to themselves that they could do nothing, that no one was near who could possibly care for theosophy, and that particular town was the most difficult for the work. The great mistake in these cases is forgetting the law indicated in which HPB wrote. It is one that every member ought to know, that the mind of man is capable of bringing about results through means of other minds about him. If we sit and think that nothing can be done, that our subtle mind meets other minds within the radius of our sphere, not small, and shouts to them, nothing can be done, of course, then nothing is done. But if unselfishly and earnestly we think theosophy and desire that others should, like us, be benefited by it, then to the minds we meet in stray moments of the day and many hours of the night, we cry, Theosophy, and help and hope for thee. The result must be an awakening of interest upon the singlest provocative occasion. Such an inner attitude, added to every sort of attempt at promulgation, will disclose many unsuspected persons who are thinking along this very line. Thus will the opportunity of the hour to be taken advantage of. The masters have said that this is a transition age, and he who has ears will hear what has thus been said. We are working for the new cycles and centuries. What we do now in this transition age will be like what the great Dhyan Chauhan's did, the transition point, the midway point in evolution, at the time when all matter and all types were in a transition and fluid state. Then they gave the new impulse for the new types, which resulted later in all the vast varieties of nature. In mental development, we are now at the same point, and what we now do in faith and hope for others and for ourselves will result similarly on the plane to which it is all directed. Thus, in other centuries, we will come out again and go on with it. If we neglect it now, So much the worse for us then. Hence, we are not working for the same divine organization, for some definite organization of the new years to come, but for a change in the manas and buddhi of the race. This is why it may seem indefinite, but it is nevertheless very defined and very great in scope.
Thank you. This concludes our program for the ULT-PC. Please remember that it is up to us to continue this work. Mr. Crosby has done his job. HPB and Mr. Judge have done their jobs. It's up to us as foot soldiers to help with this effort to keep this philosophy alive and to continue on with our work of embodying this and living the life. Thank you for joining us.